other times in your relationship, your sexual relationship, where it could be said you felt like a goddess?
Were there other times?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Describe those for us.
Well, it was more just how, rather than the act, it almost could have been almost any act, but it was how he made me feel and how his demeanor was and how he treated me during those things that made me feel special. And like, it wasn't just for physical gratification, it was because our minds and our hearts were sort of in alignment as well.
Is that a feeling that you experienced before in your life, before Mr. Alexander?
I would say yes, I've experienced it before.
To this degree?
Well, as far as the way he put me on a pedestal, no, not to that degree.
And you say he put you on a pedestal. We talked about it. We've talked a little bit this morning about, you know, the bath, the things he did for you. Were there other things you felt like we haven't talked about where he put you on this pedestal?
It was more like the way he would look at me sometimes, compliments he would give me, and sometimes just out of the blue he would recall something that I did, or a thought he had that day, and usually it was in terms of elevating me above all else kind of thing. And I mean, I didn't really believe it, but I believed that he might believe it. So it made me feel special because he viewed me that way, that I was somebody special.
So in terms of your relationship with Mr. Alexander then, there were times when you were way up here on this pedestal, right?
Yes.
And there were other times you were down on the ground being kicked, right?
Yes.
We can pause right here, even though it's not a commercial break, because it's worth it. I mean, the pedestal and the grave, you know, either in the pedestal or the grave thing is sort of, that's classic, like, distorted personality thinking. Like, they wrote a book about it called "I Hate You, Don't Leave Me," but that's, analysts can tell you about that maybe. But here's what's interesting too, is he's using a game on her that, right, which he says, well, he made it seem like I was, you know, a goddess to him. I didn't really believe him, but I believed that he thought that, and that was interesting, like, that was compelling. Okay, here's the thing that's so sick. I mean, see, she actually is attractive, but see, your friend here who, like, knows all the psychopath games, one of my games, before I, like, you know, was punished by the universe, like, which was before our game, friends, one of the things to do is tell a very unattractive, overweight girl to play the role that you're like that she's like a goddess, and right, and you know, they say you're doing, you really, you know, I remember drinking and taking out a girl, and you know, I don't know, was drinking and eating buffalo wings or something, but she was moving back to Brooklyn. I telling her things like there would be things you would say of a goddess. She's a very unattractive, like sort of overweight girl that had, you know, her hair was sort of thinning, and I thought, oh, you don't believe me. Well, I did. She said, well, I don't know if I exactly believe you, but certainly no one had told her such a thing before. That's a way to get an unattractive girl into bed. I mean, this is a person, but what's interesting too is that he seems to have done, it would be inaccurate to think that like a guy who's like looking to pick up girls like that, like, isn't taking notes and things like that and coming up with strategies. Like she says he would remember something like that. See, you know, I was so surprised he remembered it. Like, geez, I really remember that time you told me about your cat and taking it to the vet. Like, that always stuck with me. What a kind person you are, Jodi. Like, the signal being not that he thinks she's kind to me, but he's saying even deeper, like, oh, he remembers like details of what I say. No, he writes them down. I mean, they read books like How to Pick Up Girls. I mean, it's not, and a person who's intelligent, but not intelligent enough to, like, do anything with their life, and, like, wants to pick up women and hasn't grown out of that. Remember, your narrator was always accused of being repressed because I grew out of that. I'm talking about myself at, like, 21 when I talk about these kind of things. I grew out of that a long time before I got to our game. But right, I mean, they're taking notes and doing strategies and like working on games, and they can also read it in books. Like, right, remember details. Also, a psychopath can take, someone who's really sick of the mind, you know, they can take one of those books that's just meant to be like how to make your wife feel special and like come up with diabolical ways to interpret it. Like, oh, you know what I'll do? I'll take notes on things she says. We say, oh, geez, Stephen, I don't think anyone does that. Human nature is basically good, right? No, come into objective reality. There are people that do that in social groups. There were people who were friends of my parents, and my parents who say, you know what they do when they go to a party and they talk to all these different people who are like highly placed, they go home and like take notes on things they said and put them on note cards and memorize them, and then when they go back there, they're like, oh, you're the guy, I remember you, and instead of saying like, you're a senator and I want to like get in with you, they say like, well, you're the guy, right? You're the guy who painted his house red, but you didn't like the color, so you repainted it. I always remember that about you. You can read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie and interpret it in a sick way if you want. Read that book. Read that book on acid. You may do all kinds of things. News and commentary. We will be back.